Whenever I start a new project, this is exactly what I do. I go to the site and create a new site. In this case, I'll call it Planets, and I'll go to the desktop and I'll make a new folder and I'll call it Planets, and I'll click Create. So here's my planets. I choose, and then I choose Save, and now you'll see that I have an empty folder. So I always go through and I make a new file that's HTML, and I create it, save it, and I save it in the folder called index because that's the default file. If I'm working on a project where I'm laying out the page first, I'll go through and call this layout just so that I know that it's my layout page that I'm working on. And I'll save that inside of my site. So now if I look inside files, you'll see I've got my layout.html. Then I'll come up to the CSS designer and I'll click the plus sign and I'll create a new CSS file. And then I'll come in here and I'll call that reset.css, and I will link it to the page, and I will click OK. And now you see that it's got a link for a reset CSS that's a style sheet that's text, and you'll see that that is now inside here as well. So if I go to the designer and I click here again and create another new style sheet, I'll call it common.css, and I'll click OK. And again, it's linked and it comes in second underneath. And then in the files, I'll have the common CSS, and there's the reset, so it's all in the same folder. Now the great thing about having the CSS linked inside is you'll see I do have access to the code here. So right now I see the source code. Now I see the reset CSS. Now I see the common CSS. So with that being done, in my reset, I'll just go through to my browser and I'll type in Meyer reset, and then I'll scroll down to his page. I'll copy his text that I need. I'll just paste it in there and I'll save. Now what some students will do is they will keep a copy of the reset CSS file just on their thumb drive, on their computer, whatever. When they go to start a new site, they'll create the folder first on the desktop. They'll drag a copy of the reset CSS in there, and then they'll open up Dreamweaver and they'll create a site, choose the folder, and the reset file's already there. In that case, they just go to the designer and say attach an existing style sheet. It'll ask you which one do you want to attach, and it will do that. Okay, so there are always stages and steps you do at the beginning of every project, and that's what I do to start. Also inside files, I'll come into the files tab, I'll right click on the folder, and I'll choose new folder, and I'll create a folder called assets. Sometimes people like to keep their CSS in a separate folder, and so they might create a new folder, call it CSS, and then take the common and the reset and move that into the folder. Now because I'm moving it into the folder, it has to relink the files because I've changed the relationship between the index page or the HTML page and the CSS. But Dreamweaver does that for me. So if I come in here, you'll see now that it says it's in CSS reset and CSS common. And if I take those two files and I move them back out, then it will update the links and put them back the way they were. And I can just take that and delete the folder. I don't need it anymore. Okay.
That's in our tutorials, right?
No, I'm recording it right now, so I'll
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're in this, you just ask the question. Okay. Because sometimes even people will go through and they'll make a CSS folder, they'll make a JavaScript folder, they'll make a video folder. Some folks inside assets will go through and put a new folder inside assets, and we might call this, they might make a folder just for JPEGs. They might make a folder just for navigation images. They may make a folder, in there and then drill down and do more and do more and do more and do lots of different types of things. How organized you want to get is up to you.
Stop. So
Anyway.
And then what did you say was the difference between having an index and a layout?
So an HTML page is just an HTML page.
Mhm.
You know how, so we're going to get into, with this project, I'm making a page called layout where I'm just going to lay out the page and that's it. Then we're going to take that page and turn it into a template, which means we're going to lock down certain areas of the page. And so we make a new one. It'll open up an untitled HTML page that already has the design already in it. And we just go through and put in the content. Save that as Mercury. Then we create a new page from the template, fill in the information with Venus, save that as Venus.html. Then we open up the template again, a copy from it, call that Earth, another one Mars. And because of that template, let's say that I go through, I make a mistake. I've got a spelling error in my footer. If I make a change in the template, it updates Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. So those are individual pages. So I just call it layout because I'm using it just as a, you know, sometimes when you're working in Illustrator, you might have like a working file that you work stuff into, and then when you're good, you copy that into a new document and you call that one whatever. Same thing with these.
Okay.
Each HTML page is a different page. So if you go to a website that has 4 things in the navigation and you're clicking to go between them, you're actually clicking between 5 pages. The index page, or the home page, and then Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars is how that works out. Okay? So in the end, you will have an assets folder, common CSS, reset CSS, an index page, which is the splash page that we designed a couple weeks ago. Then you'll have a page called Mercury, a page called Venus, a page called Earth, and a page called Mars. Okay? And that's all you'll have in there. Interesting?